It's going to play a 30-second intro here.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, mostly just so I can, let's see. It's live now. I want to just go to the comments and I want to post this just so that people know to join.
Mm-hmm.
Please leave comments and join. Like and sub and all that. And I think we're live. And here, if anyone else wants to join, I hope they want to join. Let's hope we get people. If not,
so what is your image there, by the way?
Oh, so the image?
Yeah.
What do you think it is? What's your guess?
Looks like some sort of, I don't know, like, is it an Old Testament figure?
It is, yeah. It looks like Jesus, I think, if you're like just a random Protestant or someone seeing it.
Uh-huh.
Which this person is one of the most famous types of Christ in the Old Testament.
I would imagine Moses, probably.
No, it's Joseph, actually.
Oh, okay. Okay, interesting.
Yeah. No, it's Joseph when he's in prison, right before he gets taken to Pharaoh.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why?
Okay.
Because Joseph, King of Dreams, is a DreamWorks movie that I think is very underrated.
All right.
It's also just he has a bunch of funny pictures. So like you need a picture for a YouTube channel, you can just grab scenes from the movie as like reaction shots pretty easily.
Mm-hmm. So yeah,
I think this is just a good picture to set the tone too, because it's like kind of melancholy or whatever.
Melancholy contemplativeness, which goes with you. That's very you.
Yeah.
So there's a number of things we wanted to discuss. One was, I don't know what you had on top of your mind, actually. I still had the couple things on my mind, but yeah.
Yeah, I was just hoping we get someone in the live chat. I mean, we can talk about whatever you want to talk about, basically. I'm just hoping.
Israelite yet?
So here's our options. Option 1, talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah,
it's fine. Option 2, we can go and review the debate I had with the Protestant YouTuber, which is kind of an interesting one and very scriptural.
Recently?
It was like 2 days ago or something, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Option 3, which is going to be dependent on other people. We just try to get somebody else to join our stream, which right now we have one viewer. It might just be me.
We could review the Protestant debate you had. Although I would like to get into some of the discussions.
No, let's do your topics. We can do the debate anytime. It's good backup. Let's do your topics if you have.
Well, just that we were discussing about the natural law, and you had some hesitations. I was actually somewhat taken aback by your hesitations.
So yeah, give your argument again at a high level. What's your case?
I'm not sure if I could roll it out at a high level right now, but basically the idea was. So, if I remember correctly, in the Summa Theologia and the Treatise on Laws, I think in the section on natural law, St. Thomas talks about. He gives an example of some sort of Germanic barbarian tribe or something, and how they didn't think stealing was like a sin or illegal. Do you remember this? By the way, have you come across this?
I don't. Here, we can do this though.
But you get the point. Not all, like the natural law, even if you believe the natural law exists, that is still consistent with. That's how I'm remembering. I don't think he used the word barbarians, but let's see what pops up. Yeah.
The natural law is nothing else than rational creatures' participation in the eternal law. Even barbarians were seen as possessing rational souls and capable of moral discernment. Some people are natural. We don't need to get into that.
Doesn't look like it's hitting precisely what I had in mind.
So what is it? It's if a barbarian does something normal in their society,
yeah,
are they damned?
Not necessarily. So yeah, I think he thought that there was sort of second order, what would have been the terminology that he would have used? Second order kind of
Has no reasonable way to know better.
Not everything was just as kind of first order obvious with regard to the natural law. And there might be funny enough, Kant popped into my mind, just the kind of the difference between certain propositions which are kind of like immediately discernible and other ones that are kind of require more deduction and elaboration to arrive at sort of the idea, like obviously, like, you take a really crude example, like 1 + 1 = 2, right? There's like pretty immediate apprehension of that, but there could be other more complex mathematical conclusions that would require more work to get at. But basically, just the main notion was, if like, no one could deny like the basic logic of kind of first order natural law, right? Like, seek good, avoid evil. But that doesn't mean that sort of everything else is just universally sorted out and elaborated.
I think the biggest question is, how strong is the conscience of someone who's unbaptized and unchurched and uncatechized? Like, my assumption has always been, and I know I'm very biased, is that all the really major sins, people know it's wrong. Like, if you listen to the way women talk after they've had an abortion, like the way they have mental health issues or whatever, even though they thought it was good, I think deep down they know it's wrong, but it's just like this Nietzschean suspension of your moral gut reaction to go along with, I think they're suspending what their heart tells them in order to, like, everyone has a visceral reaction to like gay marriage. It's just called homophobia, right? But people find it gross. Like, we have the moral intuition. Their conscience screams at them. But they just think they have homophobia.
That's quite fascinating, actually. I mean, yeah, it reminds me of Brothers Karamazov. Crime and Punishment. That, like what you just described. I don't know if you remember Crime and Punishment, if you read it, but that's
I've not read it, but I know Jordan Peterson's description of it.
That's very similar to what goes on in that book, where he thinks he's like this. He's like inspired by Napoleon. Like, the funny thing is, the weird thing about it is, Nietzsche knew about him mainly through this book, Brothers Karamazov. Crime and Punishment and Notes from Underground. He actually never read Brothers Karamazov, Nietzsche. So I think he mainly read Crime and Punishment and Notes from Underground. But I don't think Dostoevsky knew about Nietzsche. So some of these ideas were they must have been in the air. So he kind of inspired by Napoleon, and he thinks he wants to become the Superman that transcends maybe law and morality, and kind of takes things into his own hand. And then he kills this old lady who, it's been a long time since I read it, but anyways, but the point is that basically, he his conscience gets the better of him in the end. And so it was very similar to what you were saying. I was actually thinking about that book a lot today in relation to this, but certainly it has to be true to some extent. Like, I think both must be true. That, I mean, all law of all societies would have perfectly reflected the natural law. And if what Aquinas was saying wasn't true.
That's you, right? Or is that me?
Yeah, that's me. I don't know why I put it on mute, but for some reason it's still going through. Right? It like all laws of all societies and all their customs would have perfectly reflected divine law. His divine law being kind of like the clearest elaboration of natural law to some extent. And but why didn't they? But at the same time, what you're saying is there has to be something in the middle of both these ideas. Because I think there's something also to what you're saying. And I think, yes, like a lack of grace can numb and obscure moral instincts and intuitions. All sorts of things can, I think, numb and obscure. Yes, a lack, absence of grace and sin and errors could certainly, I think, obscure and numb certain moral instincts and intuitions.
I guess you tell me, in your time before you were a Christian, and I assume you did these grave sins. I assume everyone has done these grave
Yeah.
sins, but did you find that your conscience spoke to you differently before and after you were catechized?
100%. But at the same time, before I was catechized and baptized, let's just say things weren't quite as clear, but definitely there was still that law inscribed in the heart. The law inscribed in the heart was definitely there. And if you did certain sins, there'd be certain residences in your soul, kind of like disruptions of the force, like in Star Wars or something, Is that what they call it? You're a Star Wars guy, not me.
Yeah, sure.
Disharmony in the force or something. Like you could feel
disturbance. Yeah.
Disturbance. Yeah. And I remember like coming across an article that was written on the 7 deadly sins. Years and years and years ago, not written by a Christian even. And I remember thinking, wow, yeah, like there's something to this concept of sin, because when I do certain things, I could feel that this is like unnatural, and I could feel it in some strange metaphysical part of my soul, like deep into my core. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know all of it because I was raised generally in the church. But I remember like as a kid when I'd get into fights, like there'd be like a wall that I feel like I'd have to like something holding me back from throwing the punch. I'm like, what is this inside me? Like I felt like I had to use my force of will to break through the wall, which looking back is really scary.
Interesting. So, but at the same time, I have nowhere near the moral clarity that I have now then, right? So, like I remember arguing, I think in favor, was it abortion? Yeah, junior in high school, we had a political science professor said, how many are you in favor of abortion? How many of you are against it? And
in favor of abortion or in favor of choice?
Choice.
I think it's different if you're actually committing it. Like I think when you listen to women's testimony that have done it, it's hard not to read through the lines there.
Yeah, I haven't heard those.
If you read through the lines of people that are in like gay relationships where they're like, it's causing me so much mental anguish, like my internalized homophobia is telling me it's wrong, but it's just the way I was raised, I need to fight it. It's like, I think you're just renaming your conscience internalized homophobia.
I have not heard these conversations. It'd be very interesting to hear. That is a super interesting question. But to what extent but there's got to be an interplay, right? Like there's got to be like ideological influences. Like, right, there's got to be like a tug of war going on.
Right. No one really knows the exact state except for God. I agree.
Right.
I think the bar is way higher than we act like it is. It's really easy to say, hey, someone's an atheist, therefore every single thing society says they can't be judged for if they do it. It's like, I don't know for sure that that's what's in their heart,
Well, the thing with the matter, yeah. I think yeah. I don't know, but certainly at some level or in some way, I would imagine there have to be a reduced culpability if everyone has always told them this is not only not wrong, but this is right.
I think, let's take the other perspective. Let's say there is slight reduced culpability, but still generally, really bad stuff that you're expected to know just from your own heart and you're rejecting it. Like, you can't just say, well, abortion was normal, therefore I'm not guilty for it.
It gets a little bit more difficult though, because here's one thing. Here's one question to throw at you. When I mentioned to you about like I was like, I don't know, let's say 21 years old before I was ever considering Christianity seriously. The writer himself wasn't even a Christian. like he was some kind of almost, yeah. But I intuited something when I had read about this very strange term, the 7 deadly sins, right? Because we don't usually hear the word sin, right? Did you hear that word used in any textbooks in your educational journey before public schools?
I can't remember it standing out. Because I was exposed to enough Christian material that it wouldn't have stood out to me as a weird word to run into.
Yeah, to me it was this like almost like
Like
archaic
medieval?
gothic word that was very intriguing, but foreign, right?
Interesting.
But it almost had this like medieval romanticism to it. Like, what is this kind of like older, like Baroque, like visiting some old like Gothic cathedral or something? What is this about sin?
You weren't raised with Veggie Tales or anything?
Say again?
You were not raised with Veggie Tales or anything?
No. So, so I remember being intrigued by this 7 deadly sins, and there was something so classical about it to me. It just kind of just struck me as like, yeah, there's something like just classic about this. I really remember I didn't really know much about it, but I was just somehow struck that there was something almost archetypal. Somehow there was something like I just somehow knew people thought in these terms for a very, very long period of time, but not anymore. But that there was something to it. And as I read about them, because some people might try to lessen the force, because sin in our culture by a lot of like disgruntled former Protestants, some even times even former Catholics, has really taken on a bad name. It just sounds like impossibly judgmental. Like you could just imagine someone having like a meltdown if they hear it. So people might just try to soften the impact of it, right? In this day and age, they might say, "Oh, the 7 capital vices" or something, right? But no, he used the word sin, and yeah, and then
Yeah, keep talking.
I knew that like there's something just through like this kind of like let's call it existential self observation. I'm not sure if that was a particularly helpful term, but um, I kind of picked up that there was something to this. But the point is, I was already kind of like somewhat unusual, kind of one of these like there's a category in psychology, highly sensitive person. I was like in that, I think by definition, relatively rare category. And I was kind of like on a spiritual search, which again is not the most typical activity in our culture or society. And I had been introduced to some like spiritual and religious and older texts and literature of various sorts, not necessarily Christian, but so I was in a particular sort of a place. Now, like for example, I would have believed in the immortality of the soul, you see, and I would have believed in God, although I would not have, although my belief in God would, I'm not like I would have defined it something maybe as like in kind of like almost deistic terms, kind of something like a supreme spirit. I don't know how my ideas about God would not have been super clear and coherent, but I would certainly have believed in God and the immortality of the soul. Now, we have so many people in our culture.
Did I cut out? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I could hear you. But we have so many people in our culture. Did you get what I was saying? I was not a materialist, adamantly. I was very passionately not a materialist. So, but what I'm saying is there's so many people in our culture who they just simply are secular materialists. They don't believe in any sort of spiritual realm, let's call it that. They don't believe in any kind of immortality of the soul. And if they have an entirely materialistic conception of everything and non-theistic, and they don't really kind of have that spiritual intuition, it hasn't really been awakened in them, if we could put it in those terms, and they haven't really been exposed to the relevant literature, broadly speaking, would they not be in a far less receptive place to, because we're talking about like so these people would basically probably reject any notion of like how could natural law or make sense in that kind of secular materialistic framework. How could they take seriously moral, like a sense of like moral intuitions that meant anything other than maybe kind of a constructivist notion? Like, in other words, these people might be so deluded, so diluted by error and by vice, by sin, and it's so perfectly reinforced sociologically that you don't think that that's like just another like they might get little glimpses and glimmers here or there. We don't know, but I'm thinking they're really there's got to be to a certain degree such obscurity in their intellect and such weakness, and such weakness in their conscience that and to some extent, what if they were just utterly formed by their environment that way? It would seem to lessen culpability. How would you respond to that?
Because I guess the question that would come down to is how much is God still speaking in their hearts, and are they saying no to the God that's trying to intervene in their heart and in their life?
But how would they understand that if they're convinced atheists and materialists?
Maybe here's a question to come at this a totally different angle.
Okay.
How are non-Christians saved? Because as Catholics, right now the church.
You got cut out. Hello.
Sorry. As Catholics, we say people can be mystically saved even if they're not Christians, right?
That's a way to put. That's a one way to put it. Okay.
Or how would you put it?
Well, I just the term mystical. Yeah. Okay. But I think isn't there a presupposition there that they are trying to live some sort of just, righteous, moral life to the best of their ability? And I don't remember the exact terminology, but
it's right here. Those can attain salvation who through no fault of their own do not know the gospel of their church, yet sincerely seek God and, moved by grace, strive to do their deeds to do his will as is known to them through the dictates of
this presupposes something like the virtuous pagan. Like this presupposes someone who has the preambula fide, I think.
I don't know if it necessarily has the preambula. This presupposes that when God acts in your conscience, you work with the grace of God that acts in your conscience. If you kill your conscience to go with whatever society teaches you,
that is quite wicked and sinister. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, we've been, since Vatican II, we've been talking so much about, since Vatican II, we've talked so much about the hope for people that aren't Christian. But I think you can't get around this. I think even the Vatican II version of it is not that light on the idea of ignorance does not apply to the most mortal sins. If you think God actually has a conscience for people,
there's one. Okay, there's a couple of things. This is a very interesting argument you're making. I guess what I would say is, let me think about that for a second.
One argument to add on top of this too, just as you think about it, I think one of the major things Christianity does when it spreads is Christianity even helps non-Christians be saved because Christianity can kill a lot of these societal evils. So even if someone doesn't become a Christian, the odds someone is look what Christianity has done to war, right? If you used to pillage and, totally take all the women of a town when you took a town, the fact that Christians have changed the nature of war, that is way more rare now, means that a lot of secular people, their odds of committing that specific mortal sin has gone down a lot, right? So Christianity can affect, it has affected morality of the people that it is inside of, and right. So
I know, yeah. Well, actually, I think St. Paul refutes the idea that I was presenting to a certain extent.
Which
Romans, at the beginning of Romans, where he talks about, because I just was reminded of it because this quotation right here, right?
Which translation do you want to go with?
God for lies, serving the creature rather than the creator. That's 129 from Romans, I think, right? What's that?
Was it 129?
Oh, well, no, in the footnote of the Lumen Gentium.
Oh, okay.
It must be referencing Romans. If you have to go to the bottom,
19 star. Mark 4:14.
No, I thought it was footnote 129. Footnote 129, wasn't it?
Sorry. Yeah. Saved dictates the conscience. It says 19 stars. What it says right here.
No. Go down to 129, and that I'm talking about this exchange of truth of God for a lie.
Okay, and let me just keep
In
our
other
notes.
words, as St. Paul kind of says, not kind of says, as St. Paul says in Romans in the beginning, he talks just about the kind of
129. And
they
then this
should have known, the Gentiles, that basically these pagans should have known better, and he like outlines their degeneration from kind of this vicious cycle downward from error and vice to further error and vice.
Yeah, although they knew him, they did not honor him, give thanks to futile and thinkings.
Darkened, you see, it's interesting. But this darkening seems that, remember, I think the idea is that it adds the culpability, I think, not reduces it.
Well, yeah, it's like God stops working with them and he lets it drift. It's once you start to drift, God will sometimes let you keep drifting.
See, because this C24, that's what I was kind of getting at. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not that God causes the lust, but he stops helping you, maintain your garden and lets stuff over, like he lets these pieces of you overgrow.
So there's this gradual kind of perversion and denaturalization, if you will. This degeneration.
Yeah. What was the other one? 19? Was it footnote 19? It's footnote. So the one that's referenced specifically there on why we have hope is Mark 4.
Yeah, because God would not just allow people to just be so deceived by error, to just kind of walk through life in utter darkness and be deformed and defiled by certain vicious sins, and then just kind of grant, like, in other words, like there would be some sort of try to work with them to
Real
break.
quick, I can't tell what this is referencing because the Mark 19 doesn't seem to match this at all.
What is it?
Is this 19? Footnote 19. Footnote 19 is Mark 4:14, which is right here. The sower sows the word, and it's like this is not that at all.
Huh.
So, am I misreading?
I can pull it up.
Oh, no, 14 here. Oh, it's referencing Leo the 8th.
Okay, you found it?
Yeah, look, it's referencing. It's actually referencing this.
Okay.
That is not super useful because let's see if we can find this. I'll ask ChatGPT.
Let's see if ChatGPT is that good. I want to see this. My guess is it's not going to get it. Let's see. So look like it's some sort of ecclesiastical. Oh, okay.
Aside of which there's neither true faith nor eternal salvation. The church always distinguishes between these, principally ignorant. Can you say about non-Christians generally?
I do grant your essential in this kind of dispute, if you will. I do basically grant your conclusion. Yeah, like, don't be so easy to dismiss, like, just to say that there's like no couple. Like, I think it's more complicated than how I was portraying it.
I think when you really listen to people, I think people have way more of a formed conscience than we say they do.
It's quite interesting. That is quite interesting.
Which is hard because it's not the kind of thing you can prove, and when really pushed in a debate, everyone will deny it. So you actually kind of have to watch from like an outside observer and just see. I think the clearest example is when gay people say that their internalized homophobia makes them hate themselves and they need therapy for it. It's like, no, that's just a conscience.
Well, we lived in strange times, finally Catholic. It's like, you know, I mean, even still today, as secular as the world seems, as kind of post-Christian, post-religious world seems, still, I don't know exactly. I'm curious what you think. I still think possibly a majority of people have some knowledge of religion. Like if their parents were either religious or they were like raised, but they kind of fell away. I don't think there's that many people out there who just like grew up and like their parents had already like totally secularized or were raised totally secular, and they just, and like even maybe their grandparents even, and there was just no contact or no influence of public secular life education. I don't think there's too many people who don't I wonder like how many, you see what I'm saying? Like, I mean, sometimes the weird, what do you think about that?
So in the way where I am really hardcore in saying, I'm telling you, even non-Christians are morally culpable because they have consciences. I'm actually the other direction on invincible ignorance on Christ. I think it's, you know, if you're the average person living in Southern California or living in New York or living in Florida right now, I don't know if you get the gospel told to you in a way that you're culpable for not believing it. If you just like,
You're talking about that. I think I sent you that thing by Alphonsus Liguori, which is not just by him. It's a normal sort of a statement of theologians at least from the Baroque era, increasingly into the 20th century. I can't speak much before that, but this idea that it has to be sufficient, the gospel has to be quote unquote sufficiently proposed, right?
what does that mean though? Is it like
You've heard
you two paragraphs once that counts, or do you need to like
basically like the way like a lot of Christian evangelicals like encounter people would not be sufficiently proposed. Like it's got to be kind of laid out sufficiently, compellingly, clearly, persuasively. You can't just kind of give a superficial
let's look the atheists that we meet in the public square that is YouTube, and they're not willing to consider it because they think the gospels are anonymous and they think you can't prove there's a God. If anything, nature implies there's no God. Is it possible to even give them enough of a pitch for the gospel that they don't still have invincible ignorance?
In one conversation?
In 100 conversations.
100 conversations.
Like, maybe here's a better way to put it. If they think the gospels are anonymous and they think Aquinas' 5 ways don't work, and if I fail to convince them on those 2 points, do they remain invincibly ignorant even if I tried talking to them 100 times?
You're saying that if after, maybe 100 is a bit much, but let's just say
let's say a dozen. Sure.
Okay, you've talked to them like 15 times at good length, and you're saying throughout all those conversations they continue to think that Aquinas' 5 ways are not convincing or persuasive, and that the Gospels are not sufficiently reliable accounts, is what you mean, right?
Yeah, like let's say they got the full account, but they're too convinced of the problem of evil, and so like I'm going to actually ignore the whole account, or they're too convinced.
Now you're talking about the private. Well, I mean, no, I mean, so this notion. Did you see what that did I send you that thing by the little statement by Alphonsus Liguori?
I probably skimmed it. I don't remember.
Let me just show you exactly how it was written. I think the word used was sufficiently proposed. I've also heard Garrigou Lagrange say something very similar. Let me see if I can pull it up. Okay.
Oh, this is just too. What can I search to try to find the Muslims? No, none.
I found it. Okay. So this is by St. Alfonso Liguori in
You want
his
to share your screen?
Theologia Moralis. Do I here? Let me send this to you. Okay, where are you? Okay. Where are you? There you are. See this link?
Thank you, Nichoka.
There you go. Netochka. Did you open it?
Yes. How do I add to stage?
There we go. Right. From Theologia Moralis, Volume 1. A heretic, as long as he judged. So this is about a Protestant. This is about a Protestant. A heretic, as long as he judges his sect to be more credible or equally credible, is not bound to believe, because the faith is not yet sufficiently proposed, and he would act imprudently. It's an interesting statement. Now, I'd have to go look to see. I actually have this volume. Whether...
So this literally says, as long as you believe your heresy, you're not bound to believe. Which is like, why would you believe if it this seems circular almost?
No. What did he say? Okay, hold on. I actually have the volume, because I'm wondering if this person is just quoting an opinion by Sanchez, that, because if you've ever seen this text by Liguori, he quotes like all the moral theologians, and then he like comes up with his own conclusion. So maybe he's just quoting Sanchez. Maybe it's not his actual opinion. So I'd have to check, but that's not how I read it. What he's saying is, like, let's say you talk to a Calvinist.
I talked to one for like 45 minutes a couple days ago.
And if you have not kind of like, I don't know, I'm assuming what sufficiently proposed means.
Well, he's not saying sufficiently proposed. He actually defines it here way higher bar, where he's saying you have to literally have convinced them. This is almost saying, unless they think the Catholic Church is more credible, you're not bound to believe in it.
Well,
So,
no, I mean, yeah. What he's saying is, look, if the I think this, I'm going to check this one actually.
Here's the Calvinist guy I debated, by the way.
Okay, so this individual, if you're talking to him and you're telling him why he should become Catholic, if it does not appear to him like you know, that your arguments are more persuasive, reasonable, and credible, it would be the idea is it would be imprudent of him to become Catholic in the absence of sufficient evidence, so to speak, right? So it makes sense to me.
But it's just, that's a really high bar. So literally,
well, how else is he supposed to if he's not convinced?
So literally, unless a Catholic convinces someone the Catholic Church is true, they don't have to believe in it. It's like,
I mean, how wouldn't it be imprudent for him to say decide to if he is equally?
Yeah, but here's my question for you: does the word invincible ignorance even mean anything if what you mean by invincible ignorance is just they don't think the Catholic Church is true? Like,
well, I mean, think about it. Like, they are convinced Catholic claims are not true and that theirs are. Literally, and if you're not able to convince them otherwise, would it not be dumb for them to become Catholic?
So no, but the implications of that are literally everyone who doesn't believe the Catholic Church is true is not bound to believe.
That is the implication.
No one is bound to believe then, because
no.
I mean, all the people bound to believe anyway. It's circular.
Well, I don't think so. I mean, until you think that there is something there, until you have reason to believe there's something there, you're not gonna.
Yeah. So until you believe, you're not bound to believe.
Well, no. Like I think what it, like I guess there's different maybe levels or degrees, right? There's the initial openness, and then there's like the full assent of faith. right?
I,
Would it not be imprudent to make a full assent of faith if it legitimately does not appear to you that the Catholic faith is more and church is more credible than the Calvinists? If you're a Calvinist, if you're a convicted Calvinist,
yeah. So really, what it would come down to is if you're a Calvinist who believes the Catholic Church is true, then you're committing sin by not converting.
right? That's what Vatican II says.
Right. That's just such a low bar or high bar or what, it's
Well, I mean, what is supposed to be? What alternative would you propose?
the alternative I propose is if you think that you can become your own pope, you're committing a terrible sin of pride.
Well, the thing is that I don't think they see it that way.
And that just seems so subjective.
Well, no, I mean,
I generally would accept, I generally actually agree with this take on invincible ignorance. I just don't like it. It feels too weak. It basically seems like the Catholic Church has no claim to be an authority except people that already think it's an authority.
No. I mean, well, no, but the idea is that you're supposed to. I mean, it maps onto just basic psychology and reality, doesn't it? Like basic, like psychological epistemology, if you will.
Yeah, but then it means all these claims about submitting to the Roman pontiff are just so weak. It's like it doesn't even mean anything.
No, I mean, most of those claims were made to people who are like former Catholics,
yeah,
like
but
people who were brought up in the bosom of the faith, and were acting in ways that were kind of going contrary to it.
yeah, but if you're going contrary to it because you don't believe in it, that's like saying I want to be your friend. I don't want to be your friend. Hey, but I'm asking you to be my friend. Like, you can't convince someone to be your friend by saying, "Hey, be my friend."
Well, no, I mean, I think a lot of those were written to like a king that was like a king over like a fundamentally majority Catholic country, but he was getting a little wobbly. He wobbled a bit, and it was kind of calling him back,
Yeah, they're like hosting Occam in his back room. Yeah,
But I mean, if you send something like that to Genghis Khan, I think he wrote a letter back to the Pope, laughing. Like I heard something like that. Maybe it wasn't Genghis Khan. Maybe it was one of his like successors. But I think someone
there's a really interesting letter to Genghis Khan that the Pope sends. Yeah,
about submitting to his authority or something.
Yeah, it's all submitting to his authority and about Mary and the Immaculate Conception. And
I
he's
think
like,
that already is it Genghis Khan or another Khan? Because
I think they do it a bunch of times, but Genghis Khan definitely gets one.
Do you remember his response?
I don't. Yeah, let's try to find where, because this is what Lumen Gentium is referencing. It's Pope.
For example, Saint Ignatius, not Saint Ignatius. Who's the Saint Xavier? What's his full name?
Francis Xavier.
Saint Francis Xavier, the famous Jesuit missionary, right?
Yep.
So he went to India and Japan, right?
Yes.
So I remember hearing someone read. I was actually at a Benedictine monastery, and they were doing table readings like during lunchtime. Everyone sits quietly, and someone kind of reads from something, but they read it in this kind of special tone. It's kind of like they're reciting it, almost liturgically. And so they're reading from like the I don't know what you call it, the annals of the Jesuit missionary history or something. Like basically it was Saint Ignatius Xavier, and he was in Japan, and so he actually goes almost like Saint Paul to Athens. Like, I mean, Saint Xavier was quite an incredible figure. He goes and he sort of presents the gospel, preaches the gospel, tries to propose it to the Buddhist high priests in Japan. And when he kind of gives a presentation of the gospel, apparently there was one response, and it was roaring laughter.
Yeah. One of the atheist guys I was on with was laughing, where he's like, "You actually think a guy came back from the dead? Don't you know that's insane?" And I'm like, yes, I know that's insane. What do you mean?" Like,
well, I would like to hear more what happened with St. Francis there. I mean, he gave, I don't remember what the substance of his presentation was, but I mean, you have to understand, like, these people, I think I'd never ever heard of Christianity at all. They probably had a lot of pride, huge amount of pride. like the Buddhist elite of Japan, and their view of things, like they don't even believe in God to begin with, and they have a very impersonalistic, sort of non-theistic view of things. They don't even believe in a soul, really. It's like, it's like they have a very confused philosophy, and they have ideas about like emptiness and kind of the mutability of all things, almost like Heraclitean in some respect. Like, I just think it just didn't make any sense to them. They're like, what is going on here? And it was just
Real
like,
quick,
it
is
was
this
too much of a slap in the face.
yeah, here, just because it's on here, we can move on to the other things after. I just want to dig into the thing Lumen Gentium references, because it seems like, is he implying that non-Christians are damned here?
Where are you?
I'm sharing my screen.
No,
Oh.
what this is Lumen Gentium?
No, this is Pope Leo the Eighth's Union
Okay,
of...
you're following the source to its. Okay,
Yeah,
so
this is
let's see
the
what's
actual
going on.
source. Yeah. So our thoughts went out to strangers that are glad, heart of the Christians. This is the exact quote that Lumen Gentium is referencing, I think. If we go down a little more, he explains it. Unfortunate of all nations who have never received the light of the gospel. They ignore God, depths of error. Salvation comes from Jesus Christ. No other name saved. Or so they want to spread the name of Jesus. It almost implies they're not saved. Duty all Christian with synodical labors. He wants to spread peace to all nations, across the seas, corners of the earth. I don't know if he actually talks about whether or not they're saved. It seems to imply here that they're not.
Well, wait a second. I wouldn't. I mean, implication is not explication, right?
Correct. I'm just
Uh,
if Lumen Gentium is referencing this for one of the most controversial parts of Vatican II,
that is quite fascinating.
what does this say? Do thou hasten to the immense multiple souls not felt as yet, the ineffable blessings those were from med, thy blood rest sitting in darkness in the shadow of death and light.
So I think what he's saying there, he wants, obviously,
he wants to
following
preserve
the will, the word, the commandment of Christ, to spread the grace of his salvation to the farthest ends of the earth as far as possible, to as many people who will embrace it and accept it and be converted. But that doesn't exclude the possibility of some sort of legitimate invincible error. Now, I mean that leads to, I mean, the question of implicit or explicit, right? Because like there's a whole debate till this day about implicit or explicit. What's the term they use? Not desire, but I mean basically the idea is like, I mean, the only way it would make sense is if at the moment of their death, kind of like you know how you hear these near death stories, near death experiences where people kind of encounter a light and they either embrace it or they don't. And in these near death experiences, they actually like say, like, yeah, some people they kind of like merge with this light, but they come back and not all of them say like in explicit conceptual terms that they thought it was. They all kind of imply it was God, but they don't imply something as specific as there isn't a universal implication of something as explicit as Jesus. It's oftentimes interpreted like new agey kind of terms sometimes, but there is, like, I remember hearing some of those stories, and like sometimes they would get afraid of the light and then they would just tumble out into darkness or something. I don't know what to make of all that. But there could be many things one could make of these near death experiences and so on. But it just makes me think that at kind of near death or the moment of death, in a way that would transcend ordinary time, and as you know, our perception of time can be warped in all sorts of different ways, like the soul has an encounter with, and it would have to be with Christ very specifically, because what would be the point of all the specificity of Christ and Christianity if it was just with a generic, God the light? but it would, and what would be the point of insistence on doctrine and dogma if it's just about a kind of transcendental union with generic divine light and not like anything that has, definite form and specificity? But it would have to be some sort of, encounter. It would have to be like some sort of moment of kind of clarity where Christ sort of like there's a self-revelation of Christ to the soul, like kind of all at once, almost instantaneously.
So
In a way
I've got,
in time how we normally know it, and they would have to like fully embrace explicitly, like, but it kind of, instead of something being like in a very linear way unfolded according to ordinary language, thought, and time, it would have to be something more somehow simultaneous or instantaneous, and they would have to embrace and not reject. It would have to be something like that. What else would it be, right?
so I
But
guess
they don't say that. They don't fill in the details.
So thing one, the thing Vatican II references does not have it. It's like vague about wanting people to be saved, but it almost implies that they're not, but it's not explicit either way. The thing you're describing, actually, though, have you read First Peter?
Read me what you have in mind, because this is how I've always filled this question in. I rarely see it spelled out. I don't know if I ever saw it spelled out, but go on, yeah.
So, for Christ once suffered for sins, righteous, unrighteous, bring you to God. He was put to death in the body, alive in the spirit. After being made alive, he went and made proclamation to the imprisoned spirits,
Right.
to those who were disobedient long ago, when God waited patiently the days of Noah, the ark being built.
Right.
In it, only a few people, 8 were saved. Not the
wait, let me see this on the screen. Could you show us on the screen?
Yeah, it's on the screen.
No, I can't see it. I just see our two images. I just see our two images right now.
So Jesus goes to the imprisoned who were disobedient long ago. He proclaims to them.
Read it again, yeah. At the main part, yeah.
Christ suffered for sins, and after he was put death in the body, he made alive in the spirit, brings alive. He goes and he proclaims to those who were disobedient and killed during the flood.
And then hold on. In it, only a few people, 8 in all.
Who was saved during the time
yes,
of Noah.
Yes. As far as civilized baptism, that now saves you also. Oh, Matt, why did I not read? This is fascinating. Go on. Yeah. I can't see.
There's another one too.
What did you have in mind? That just the notion of a mode of spiritual proclamation.
The notion that even after you're dead, if you're Jesus, you can still get Jesus preaching to you even after you're dead.
Right. Or even at a quote unquote kind of moment of death. And this would be this would be a kind of this. We don't know what kind of quote unquote proclamation this is. Like, okay, this could be in ways that transcend ordinary time and space as we know it. This could be some sort of almost like, to use not the most helpful, I can't think of a better word, but imagine some sort of like telepathic.
Yeah, for this reason, the gospel was preached.
Even kind of communication. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm imagining that this proclamation is a kind of a paranormal sort of communication. Like it's maybe some sort of like telepathic, visionary, mystical sort of communication.
I think you're reading that into it. I think this is just saying.
I am reading into it, just trying to understand. Yeah.
But well, in the creed, it says Jesus descends into hell, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But what I'm saying is that's not, we're not talking about our normal everyday experience of time and space and language. Like we're talking about, spirits and a kind of a spiritual mode of communication that, like when mystics have visions, like what happens there, right? Like everything isn't just according to ordinary everyday perceptions. So I'm saying this proclamation wasn't just like something that you could just represent in a movie very easily in terms of very linear sort of ordinary material perceptions of time, space, and communication. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I wonder what because I don't know if he's doing the road to Emmaus thing for them.
Yeah, like what happened to St. Paul? Yeah, like you see what I'm saying? Like I mean, look, there's levels and varieties of perception and experience. some are preternatural, paranormal, supernatural. Like everything isn't just like, hey, me and you talking here. That Jesus communicating with spirits that are not in the ordinary kind of material realm of the world as we know it. Like this is something different. We don't know what this is. Mystery. Faith is full of mysteries. Everything isn't captured within our ordinary material consciousness and experience,
Yeah. I just a few other Bible verses about this, just as we meditate on it. One is, again, same thing from later in Peter. The gospel is preached even to those who are now dead. Kind of interesting.
So can this happen at the moment of death to people? Like in a very kind of like, and like near-death experiences would be kind of like an analog or a possible way to try to understand that better, how that could be.
Don't be
where
surprised.
It's like something's only like a few seconds, but that person experiences it as longer than a few seconds. People have near-death experiences where their life flashes before their eyes. How does that happen? I sometimes like even like just something as simple as I can go lie down in my bed, pray the Jesus prayer for 15 minutes, and that feels like regularly, finally Catholic, that doesn't feel like 15 minutes. Like when I go lie in my bed and pray the Jesus prayer for 15 minutes, I put the alarm clock on 15 minutes and then I do it. But it feels like 45 minutes. Whereas other things we do, I'm like, this felt like 45 minutes, but it turns out it was like over 2 hours. Like time is a weird thing, and everything isn't just kind of linear material communication. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. It's always hard with these things because we're again seeing through a glass darkly.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Yeah. Which is necessarily the case. I mean, if we're dealing with, nature itself is full of mysteries, let alone, more supernatural and divine things. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, here's a fun one. Slightly related. We have the first one here, just Ephesians. Again, Paul says the same thing. When Jesus descends into hell and then he goes up, when he ascends, he took many captives with him.
Right.
Which is I don't know when he says why it says. Maybe he's referencing the Psalm. Oh, should we go to the Psalm while we're here?
Interesting. Now, it's interesting, many captives. That's a very interesting, yeah.
Psalm 68.
It doesn't say a few captives. It says many captives.
What's the full one here? I didn't get it. Chariots of gods are tens of thousands. The mountain where God will dwell forever. Sinai sanctuary, ascended on high. Many captives, even from the rebellious, that you might dwell there. Yeah, I'm sure if you're really mystical, you could get way more out of this. But I don't know this well enough yet.
Let me ask you a question. No, but what was the main thing that it wasn't the whole psalm that was referenced, right? It was a specific part of the psalm, right? Wait,
yeah, it was.
Is this even a psalm?
Yeah, it's Psalm 68:18.
Change the New International Version to something else, like.
Oh, sorry. What do you want? You want
just do King James, at least. Oh, not New King James, but anyways, whatever.
Let's go the Tree of Life version.
What? Okay, we'll just do RSV. How about that? We'll do the ecumenical RSV. Okay.
Oh no, not the RSV. We got to go. What is it?
What are you gonna do? I'm a King Jameser. I love that. But anyways, that's your okay. Well, listen.
No. What's the one I have in front of me here? I think this is. I've been liking the
one you have is one Bishop Barron uses. The one you just put, I think.
Yeah, the NRSV is the biggest one. This is a. What is this one he's using? This is the RSV, not the NRSV. Just
yeah,
RSV.
a lot of Catholic scholars like to use the RSV. So,
yeah, this is the Catholic Study Bible from Ignatius Press.
Yeah. Thou didst ascend the high mount, leading captives in thy train, and receiving gifts among men, even among the rebellious, that the Lord God may dwell there.
And again, this is how Paul and these guys will read the Old Testament in ways no like sober person would read them today, because it's like they're feeling this out and they're somehow knowing this thing that we would never read it like this. But we have to trust Paul, that Paul knows that when we see that verse, which he's directly quoting, he's saying he is going to hell and then going to heaven and bringing captives.
Yeah. I want to look into that more at some future point. Some of the Old Testament references and get a deeper reading on that.
Yeah. One on this topic that ChatGPT mentions is this in 14. When Gentiles who do not have the law do by nature things required by the law, they're a law for themselves, even though they do not have the law. What is this? Not New International Version. I'm like, no wonder it reads weird.
I mean, it's not that bad of a version, but I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why it defaults to it. Gentiles who don't have the law do by nature what the law requires. Their law themselves will not have it. They will show the law requires written on their hearts. Conscience also bears witness. So just to say that.
But here's the problem, man. If you look at classical antiquity, I mean, again, I have to reiterate, like, I don't know if you've read, I would recommend sometime that you, like, you're a book collector, so there's a good Penguin edition of, like, the sayings of Epicurus, or however, how do they pronounce his name? I don't know. Epicurus, I don't know.
I think Epicurus.
Right? He's considered like one of the most materialistic of ancient Greek philosophers, right?
It's like an atomist, right?
Yeah. So that's why I bring him up. So this guy's considered like the most materialist. Like people like, caricature him and kind of make fun of him and Epicureans, and it's like considered to be like a hedonist. It's completely false. If you read him, it's just not him at all. He's not some sort of sensualist hedonist or the modern conception of what an Epicurean is. And he would like Stoics like to take shots at him and everything, and people like to take shots. But what I'm trying to say is like, if you read and you can find all the sayings online. There's a famous group of sayings of his called the Vatican sayings, because the Vatican archives, I think, kept those sayings. They're one of the main sources for his sayings, actually. But even him, like, you could recognize things in there that we would call kind of like, this is kind of like the universal kind of ascetical mentality of classical antiquity, whether it was India or China or even Epicurus in Greece, supposedly the materialist hedonist, right? But what these people believed, even Epicurus, finally Catholic, the moderns, especially the post-1960s contemporary moderns, they don't believe it. They're like the opposite of it. So, like, they don't follow the law. They're different than the ancients. The ancients were pre-Christ. There was something about how providence was working in history that was pointing to Christ, not just through the Jews, but through the Gentiles. But the ones who are post-Christ are somehow and reject Christ are somehow uniquely perverse, is what I'm trying to claim. That's my claim. I don't know if it's. What do you think?
I actually pretty strongly have the opposite opinion.
What?
So, my opinion would be, and this is informed both by my experience when I was living in India and and from the ancient times. I think that non-Christian societies and societies that have never been Christian, just there's basic things every day that are so just alien to a Christian or post-Christian society.
Yes. We're talking about the best of them. You're right. We're talking about like the so-called virtuous pagans, and we're talking about like the most luminous exemplars of classical, universal sort of classical.
And we don't know how they actually lived, but like if you look at like Julius Caesar is one that gets brought up a lot. He's taking hundreds of thousands of slaves as victims of war. Like that's the kind of thing.
No. Your point is granted. I think the synthesis is, I'm kind of taking the like most famous exemplary types and kind of generalizing from them when they were like the elite of the elite. Like,
well, and maybe they would be like a Sam Harris or a Jordan Peterson today, but like,
hopefully not, but yeah.
you know, like name one thing Epicurus and Sam Harris disagree on.
They have a different spirit, man. They have a different character. Like, well, first of all, Epicurus believes in divinity, except
Does he?
Yeah, it's just he's a polytheist, but he's kind of like he's like a polydeist. He just doesn't think they have much to do with anything.
He was an atomist, wasn't he?
Well, yeah, that was his kind of, that's like the metaphysics, if you will. But so he,
No
you know how, like,
diviner.
yeah. So he's not a deist. He believed in God, so he was like a polydeist or something. You know, he wasn't a polytheist. He was a polydeist. He believed they existed, but they didn't do anything. But he thought that they were like examples. Like you should try to be more like them, so to speak.
So he's a polydeist.
Yeah, I just made that word up, but yeah, I mean, I think so. What do you? I mean, I don't know if they'll understand that word.
Look, ChatGPT got it.
Yeah, that's nice. What does it say? See, go up. There was a quote right there.
Gods exist; they're not concerned with us.
He's actually a really interesting personality and character.
Well, I actually don't identify as a monotheist when people ask.
Okay.
I identify as a henotheist.
No.
You know what that means?
Not off the top of my head, actually.
It means there's many gods, but one particular god is supreme or extremely worthy of worship.
Okay. You mean like in the sense, like very kind of loose sense of what you mean by God, like angels, and like a loose sense of.
Yeah, and by definition, if you use the word henotheist, you're using that loose sense. So
right.
Mostly it's if you're talking to atheists, they're like, oh, you only believe one God, I believe 3,000. Like, no, I'm a henotheist. I accept all 3,000 gods. I just think most of them are demons.
Okay, I thought you were going to take that different. I thought you were going to say the angels and the saints are divinized.
Oh, no.
Okay. So basically, you creep them out the first time and you double creep them the second. No. Yeah. That would require a little bit of elaboration.
Yeah. But it's just a way to throw the wrench in.
Yeah.
And I think if you accept a definition, the second they say there's 3,000 gods, the second you accept that definition of God, the lowercase g God, Christians actually accept a lot of lowercase g gods, and the
right.
And even the Old Testament, sometimes it uses the lowercase g God in that way. So it's not like
very
totally
foreign. The Testament quotes the Old Testament in that capacity.
Yeah. It's also just fun. I think it's the more we can bring up the other religions, gods or demons,
Oh man. So what books are you reading these days?
Reading a lot of the Ignatius Catholic Study Bible. What else was I reading?
I wish I had more time to read. I feel like, to me, the days just slip. They just slip by.
I'm kind of having an NT Wright phase, which is kind of a problem.
Kind of a problem.
NT Wright's an interesting figure. Do you know much about NT Wright?
I heard that I've never read, I don't own any books from him. I've never seen any books from him. I heard he was like an Anglican priest that was a scholar and that kind of helped improve some things in biblical studies.
Yeah. So, and not directly through NT Wright, but through one of his students, I've been reading a few suggested books that are like pretty deep cuts. One of which is really interesting, which was basically like how the interpretation of basically how the Jewish people understood what rules were binding or not binding on Gentiles. Because there's actually not that much in the Bible about it, about what morality is required for Gentiles. Mostly because I think there's some case to be made that the covenant of Noah and what's in Acts 15 and how we expect mortal sin or not mortal sin to be valid for even non-Christians. There's some like through line there. Where are they going with that? Yeah, so NT Wright. NT Wright's interesting, and he's famous for what's called the new perspective on Paul. Yeah, the new perspective on Paul.
Did this influence your professor, the Matthew, the guy you were?
Yeah, I would, I would not be too specific, but
Yeah. Sorry, my bad.
Yeah. It's that guy. And I think, N.T. Wright is known for this, how is Paul, especially when talking about like the works of the law, he argues basically that almost all Protestants are misreading Paul. And everyone's like, oh, this guy's just a Catholic. Because the new perspective on Paul is basically the Catholic perspective on Paul, which is really funny.
Yeah.
The biggest thing it comes down to is when you see the word law in any works of Paul, that when Paul says law, he normally is not meaning morality generally. When Paul says law, what he's talking about is the Mosaic covenant. So he says you're not saved by works of the law, you're saved by faith. He's not saying you're not saved by being a good person. He's saying you're not saved by abstaining from pork.
Yes. Yeah, ceremonial aspects of it. I mean, that was what,
Yeah.
Aquinas would have said, but that certainly would not include the the Ten Commandments.
Yeah. To any Catholic, it's like, no crap. Like, that's obvious. But, he basically says not only is it obvious, but the correct reading of Paul and the one that the early church fathers have and the one that if you actually know the Greek, it's just totally contrary to Luther and Calvin's and most modern Protestants.
Let me ask you, there's one book that I think it might be missing from my collection that I might need to add, because I've been like slowly building up more books again. So since I came back from Russia, I bought a bunch of new books. I think it might start to slow down soon because I need to know, I have more books than I can chew for a good year at least. So I might need to. I'm probably slowing that down. I don't think I'll be getting too many more, and I've gotten a nice collection of ones I like. I mean, probably the only new books I'll buy are like, what do you call it? And by the way, I'm gonna have to head out soon because I'm starting to get really tired. Jane Austen novels, because I've been reading more literature. I quite like her writing. But in any case, this book, After Virtue, I keep hearing about this book.
I've been telling you to read that for like years.
Yeah, I've been hearing about this from multiple people, and I'm just thinking about my interests and like my collections, and I'm wondering if I should add. I'm starting to seriously wonder whether I should add this.
I think After Virtue is the single most important book you can read, given how you want to understand.
I've heard more than one person say that.
Yeah. Well, I told you before also.
When did you read it?
I read it. So I think it was one of the first books I read when I was going through like at one of my jobs. I was like going through philosophy books that were on syllabuses that I could find online.
You told me, yeah.
And this was one of the
first. Every encyclical ever known to man. No.
Yeah. This is the one that like I think really kicked it off. That was like, oh, this is an amazing book. I need to find more like this.
That's fascinating. Yeah, I remember asking a very learned priest, monk, scholar, what's one book you would recommend to kind of give to like a liberal-minded person that might kind of challenge some of their views or beliefs? He actually recommended this book, which I was surprised by.
Yeah, I think it's really good. Like,
does he talk about natural law? Because this is something that continuously interests me.
This book is about the relationship between an individual morality and a morality understood by a community, kind of.
Does he go like pretty seriously into like virtue ethics?
This book is basically the book that has said revived virtue ethics.
And in it he goes quite deep into it. So
I don't know if it's here.
The reason I'm bringing this up is because like I'm having an increasing interest in psychology, and I mean to the point, I don't know if I mentioned this to you, that we'll see how things go, but I might there's a possibility that some complex I might go into clinical psychotherapy. But I want to see how like virtue ethics can be combined, because like I really have disliking everything I'm reading from like these Freudians, like these so-called psychodynamic psychotherapists, which basically means psychoanalysts, Freudian psychoanalysts, and I mean they've, and I think they get so much wrong. But I'm trying to see like how do you like incorporate virtue ethics into like whatever is good and redeemable in modern psychology. This is like a project in the background of my mind that maybe one day will be somewhat actualized. That's why I want to know. Yeah.
I think what both of those have in common. So there's two major things that the Enlightenment rejected that virtue ethics brings back, and so does like Freudian psychology. One is a rejection of the tabula rasa, right? It's humans are made with certain brains with certain ideas that come naturally to us. You'd be surprised if you really talk to people how many people still kind of accept a tabula rasa, and you need to like lay out like, no, not only is Freudian subconscious true, actually Jungian subconscious is also true. And if all these subconscious things are true and that you have the idea of these things baked into you, and also these ideas, the big thing that from a Catholic and a virtue ethic perspective is these ideas can be broken. Your idea of what your wife is, if you consume too much, bad stuff online, you can warp the idea of woman in your head, but you still have this ingrained idea of woman. So yeah, one, rejection of tabula rasa. The second thing I'd say is a rejection of kind of like crime and punishment, but a rejection of, that humans have true free will to make any decision they want with no repercussions in their own heart. And it's no, actually, most things are habits. Most things are not one-off decisions. And these habits, you don't really get away with anything. Everything will stack. You can't really, you can't really get away from the effects of your habits.
Let's see what it looks like on Amazon. Okay, so we got like a $35 After Virtue Study Moral Theology 3rd edition. That's kind of expensive.
What's really interesting about After Virtue, I think, you might be able to find it free online too. What's really interesting about After Virtue is this central premise, which is imagine a society where we lost all science, right? There's no more science. No one even remembers what science is. He thinks that's what happens with morality. He thinks no one even knows how to do morality anymore. When we say morality, we're actually saying something different than people 400 years ago were.
And he robustly elaborates or articulates in there an account of virtue ethics to show what he means.
Virtue ethics, almost by definition, is way more embodied. And so that's why it's always hard to tell someone what virtue ethics is.
Right.
Because virtue, you know what virtue means in a sense, right? It means like a power or an ability.
Power excellence.
Yeah. What he lays out is it's like, no, the habits of virtue are negotiated in a certain time and place in society and community. And to do them in the abstract, especially if you do it in a consequentialist way.
No, I think I'm going to have to get this. This is like one of the most important works in, I suppose what you could call, I don't think he was Catholic when this originally came out, but a very kind of Catholic and just, this is an important work. Have you revisited it since you first read it?
I've skimmed it a little. I might do it as a book club with my wife at some point, but
yeah. How did it look as a second reading? Like when you followed up on it later?
I think it was a little like the first third of it is amazing no matter what. The second 2/3, I need to go back to it. I just remember it not being as interesting. It was just more like getting the details of how ethics works in a specific society.
Okay.
One thing that's last thing on this that's interesting is he has another book called Dependent Rational Animals.
Yeah.
Which is about how ethics, almost all modern ethics, assumes a fully able, free will, you have full ability to do anything. And he's like, actually, ethics for most people in real life, you're gonna have like, elderly people living with you who are sick and can't do things. You're gonna have very pregnant wives who can't do things. You're gonna have babies who can't do things or make decisions. You're gonna have people with special needs, and so it's not like 99% of people have full libertarian free will to make decisions and make consequential utilitarian choices. It's like, no, actually, the vast majority of our lives, we are constrained by either ourselves not having full ability to make moral actions or people in our lives not having the ability to make moral actions. And how does that change our approach to morality?
Right. No, I see it's on, you could find it on Internet Archive. Okay. Yeah, very good, man. I got to go to sleep.
So what's our final take on how people are saved? I think that was what most of this video is about.
How people are saved.
Do we think like what kind of we are able to have hope that Christians can be saved, but what kind of hope is it?
Sorry, you said we're able to have hope that you said non-Christians?
Nones are saved. What kind of hope is it? Well, invincible ignorance, we're saying is pretty dang strong. Like it's a very high bar to know enough, not invincibly ignorant. But in regards to being moral, it's also really low bar to.
I wouldn't characterize it necessarily as a very high bar. I would just say there's just a realism, right? There's if you like, what would be the combination of psychology and epistemology? There's like like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's just, I mean, I don't see what the alternative view would be. Like, you would just come to someone and bark at them, and then they should convert, and they'll be like, no. There has to be an actual process, like as I mentioned.
So what if it's like
a conversion of heart and mind that involves intellect and affect and so on.
Yeah, but what if
with the heart and mind?
Yeah, but you could imagine
that's why the kind of process takes like 6 months.
Someone let's say it like this: if someone just put their head in the sand like an ostrich, and they never even looked into it, and every time someone tried to preach it to them, they're like, "It doesn't seem interesting, not convincing. I'm not going to look into it more." You know, my prior take would have been that person probably has failed in certain ways, that they don't have true invincible ignorance if they didn't look into something that was getting preached. Like they had no interest or curiosity at all and did no research. When this take of invincible ignorance is, no, they're still invincibly ignorant, even if they put in zero effort.
No, not really. I think the idea, like you're talking about someone who just evades all truth seeking and all.
Not evade, just like floats downstream.
Well, no, I mean, I think those other statements, if we're just going to stick with, like, because we're talking about the documents of Vatican II, there's other statements about how, like, a man has a duty, and it's in Aquinas as well, and he actually says, I think it's a consequence of natural law. Man has a duty to seek truth and God. Man has a duty to seek happiness, truth, and God. We're ordered towards happiness, truth, and God in a very important way. And so it would be a sinful perversion to seek evil, falsehood, and sort of just the nothingness, or whatever we would call it. That'd be the opposite of seeking God, you know?
Yeah.
So there's a lot there.
Yeah, I
there's
guess
a lot to say about it.
I guess you'd be doing the conscience thing I said earlier, which is, do people actually have way louder of consciences than we act like they do?
That is an extremely interesting question. I don't know how we're supposed to figure out the answer to it. I mean,
I think we need another council. I think the next council is about how do we approach non-Christians, because I think there's no bigger disagreement in the Catholic Church right now than, hey, it's fine, basically everyone will be saved anyway, or now most people are damned, let's get to work, you know.
Well, there's got to be something in the middle. So, but I mean, there's some genuinely wicked people out there, man, that do some genuinely wicked things.
How often do you hear the take that's basically like, you have to be almost as bad as, you know, German mustache man, or else
sorry,
you have to be almost as bad as him to be damned, otherwise basically no one else is bad enough to be damned.
No, I don't really hear people talk about anything much, to be honest. The only people I talk to are people like you, man. Like I was just looking at my phone book. It's a bunch of people so actually not exactly like. I talk to more people that are like you on a regular basis than you might think, like at least a handful to some extent.
And maybe you talk to more people like me than I do.
You know, in other words, I do know a handful of pretty thinking Catholics. I mean, every single one of those people is unique. There's one that we both know that, I mean, I knew him like 1,000 times better than you did, but you met him once or twice. He was of Indian descent. Do you remember? I won't say any names.
Yeah, the one that was into the political and economic stuff, right?
Exactly. You were too liberal for him at the time. sorry. That one, yes.
Am I still like one of the more liberal Catholics? You know.
So, like he's quite a thoughtful Catholic. Like he tries to study the principles and think
Wait,
about.
let me end the stream so we can talk. I'm going to end the stream so we can talk about that openly.
Okay.